Check one. Okay, I think that looks good. Okay, I think my preamp is back. I think I just need to turn off. It's been on for, I think, about 6 years, possibly longer. So I think it just needed to turn off. That's a possibility. Got a flickering light back there as well. That's going to annoy me. Hello everyone, how is everyone doing? Thanks to Factant for the confirmation you can hear me loud and clear. That's awesome news. How's everyone doing? Today we're going to go relatively lightweight with it. Okay, we're just yesterday was a heavy one. Yesterday was a heavy one. So I thought today let's have a little revisit of reconstructions, man. That's kind of what I do. It's kind of my calling card, isn't it? And when was the last time we just had a nice little pictorial glance at some reconstructions? So this idea actually came from my guy Wesker Willie. He said, "Hey, King, you haven't done a video on Ramesses II, not a dedicated one," which I found surprising. I was like, "You're absolutely right. In terms of since I've reconstructed this guy, I've never dedicated a video to it." So, hey, that's what we're going to do today. So, shout out to everybody. Updated reconstruction of Ramesses on the screen, which I'm really happy with. We'd love to get some feedback from you guys, but see what you think. We're obviously going to go through the entire process of how we got there. But we're going to be looking at Ramesses and how Ramesses, or at least how I tried my best to give Ramesses his face back. Because, as we know, the Eurocentric community have done their best to erase this guy's countenance, or at least change it to something entirely different than what he depicted. And you guys will know if you've been on my channel. Well, if you've been on my channel from back in the day. Do you remember back in the day when I used to do reconstructions? Remember that a little while ago? If you're subscribed to the King's Monologue a few years ago, this guy who used to do reconstructions, they were pretty decent. And his process, I believe, used to be that the argument was that the ancient Egyptians look like their artwork, so you should never have to stray too far. So Factor said that was an age ago. Indeed it was. The argument is that you shouldn't have to stray too far from their artwork to make them look like how they looked. They're supposed to look like their art. The art was just an expression, a portrait of how they looked. And actually, if you see enough and you take enough time to really appreciate the portraiture, appreciate the features that you're being confronted with, then you'll realize that all the ancient Egyptians did look like their portraits. And the only reason that their portraiture has been rejected by the academic class is because their portraiture looks too much, too African. Let's just be frank. They don't like the features. All ancient Egyptian artwork, the real stuff anyway, will present you with full lips. All ancient Egyptian artwork will present you with relatively broad noses. Pointy noses are almost unheard of in ancient Egypt. They'll mostly give you relatively broad noses. They'll give you often bulbous eyes. That's actually the most, I would say that's the most popular phenotypic trait. You just see a lot of bulbous eyes. Broad, full cheeks is another thing that you'll see in most ancient Egyptian artworks. Very full cheeks. Strong cheekbones as well on top of the full cheeks. So a lot goes into the ancient Egyptian artwork, and this is consistent. So you'll find that the artwork will be consistent with the mummies. That's the one thing. I will, if I do a reconstruction and it's totally inconsistent or not consistent with the mummy, then I have to accept that fact. I won't front it as a reconstruction. If the mummy comes out and the mummy is completely divergent, and we know that the mummy is correct, we know that the mummy is that person, then I have to address that. Fortunately, that hasn't happened yet. In all the reconstructions that I've done, that has never happened. Okay, Amos Nefertari looks exactly like her mummy. Queen Taye looks exactly like her mummy. Ramesses, you're going to see, looks exactly like his mummy. King Tutankhamun looks exactly like his mummy. I've done a whole paper on Akhenaten and the phenotypic consistencies with KV55. Although we're not confirmed that that's his mummy, I think they have enough similarity to be the same. I'm looking forward to doing Seti I and Meremptah. I haven't done those yet, of the 19th dynasty. But there's a whole bunch of them, and there's no reason to stray from the mummies and the artwork. They can agree. Eurocentrism can't make them agree. This is the difference between what we do and what the Eurocentrists do. Okay, what we do is we create reconstructions that are consistent with both art and anthropology. What Eurocentrists do is they create reconstructions that are consistent with their imagination and science, in inverted commas. Okay, which basically means taking them and doing whatever the hell they want with them, having no respect for the artwork. So, there you go. So anyway, this is Ramesses. I actually like the fact someone said a minute ago, and I'm going to put this on the screen. And no, I'm not trying to start something. This isn't me having an MJ moment. You want to be starting something. This isn't it. But I'm going to put this on the screen. I don't know if you're trying to troll or not, but it's a good place for us to start. So whoever you are, thank you for making this comment. And Trazagor says, sorry, the nose is wrong, exclamation, exclamation. Now, we know where that sentiment is coming from. Okay, we know where that sentiment is coming from. That sentiment is coming from the idea that Ramesses has a really strong hook nose. Okay, a very strong hook nose. You can see it in his mummy. You can see that Ramesses' nose was a big old hook nose. Now, this is one, I'm not going to say that's false. Ramesses does have a prominent nose bridge, but does he have this big hook nose that Eurocentrists claim he has? Well, I'm going to tell you unequivocally, very unlikely. More often than not, actually, I'm going to say no. His nose, with the strong nose bridge, because I'm not going to deny he has a strong nose bridge, as you can see in the reconstruction, but that's as strong as it went, because that's how his nose was depicted across multiple artworks. And when I say multiple, we're talking about dozens, colossal busts. They didn't get his nose wrong in the gigantic bust that you have in the British Museum or in Abu Simbel or in all of those artworks. So why does Ramesses' nose look like that now? And our good guy Hervé already knows, no pun intended, as does Surfactant, okay? And I'm sure a whole host of the rest of you, is that the nose was broken, okay? Can we confirm that? Absolutely. Let's confirm that right now. Let's get that out of the way so we can not have any more question marks about why Ramesses' nose looks like that. It's actually been confirmed by our good old friend, our best friend, Zahi Hawass. So there's no need to guess here about Ramesses' nose. Okay, so let's there's actually a few pages dedicated to Ramesses' nose, but I'm just going to give you the headlines. Okay, so first of all, Ramesses' nose was broken through a process called transnasal craniotomy. Okay, that's just basically a fancy way for saying they would break the nasal passage in order to drain the brain, because they couldn't leave anything wet inside the mummy to aid the process of mummification. All of the organs and anything wet need to be drained out, and the brain obviously was one of the most important things that needed to be removed. Okay, Ramesses, we know for a fact, had this process of transnasal craniotomy. Now, I'm going to actually just quickly flip over. Let me put this up here. Okay, book. We're going to look at a couple of book pages together and read some of them together as well. So let me just quickly screen my... No, let's do it this way. Okay, there. So I want you to see there. This is an image of Ramesses' nose, and you can see the nose packing. Okay, so it's like there. So you can see Ramesses' nose. Oh, wrong side. That's not Ramesses, that's Yuya. Here we go. You've got Ramesses' nose there. Okay. And the nose was actually broken right at the bridge there. I'm going to show you another scan to show where it's broken at the bridge there, which gives it that kind of... And then after it was broken at the bridge, it was packed. Okay. The nose was packed inside after it was broken at the bridge. Now, let me just quickly flip back to full screen and do a bit of reading for you. Okay. So it says here, sagittal CT image. The head of Ramesses II shows that the embalmers filled the nasal cavity with multiple embalming materials. Now, this is where they start giving you the cap. They say, to preserve the distinctive shape of the nose. No, there's no evidence of that. It was just to stop the nose from being flat. And we know this because when we look at other members of the 19th dynasty whose noses weren't packed properly, their noses are completely flat against their face. Because after the process of mummification, the mummy would be wrapped. And if the nose wasn't packed properly, that wrapping would cause the nose to collapse and be stuck to their face. Okay, and we have several mummies who have been, subject to that. So the packing of the nose was not to do with, he really loved his hook nose. There's no literary evidence for him having a hook nose or wanting to preserve it. The idea behind the packing of the nose was just to stop the nose from being completely flattened by the process of mummification. The filling materials include long bone of a small animal, plant seeds, and resin. Now, let me just quickly confirm what I've just said to you so you know there's no cap here. Okay? I'm going to confirm to you a little bit of writing which tells you. Okay. So, let me just quickly put this up. Okay. Sorry, you might not be able to read that, but I'm going to try. I'm going to show you on the screen so you know I'm not capping here again before doing a bit of reading. So, this line refers to Ramesses II. Okay. I'm just going to read along here for Ramesses II, and this is where I'm reading from over here. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you. Just give me a second, okay? I'm going to read this to you because it's important that you understand what's going on here. So it says here, Ramesses II, king, age over 70 years old. And it says here, current general preservation status. Fairly preserved. The neck is fractured, C5, C6. The body is severed at the 3rd and 4th dorsal levels, okay? And then let me just move on to the part where it talks about the nose. Here we go. So I'm not going to show you the screen again. I'm just going to read it to you. What did I say again? Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. This is what it says in the book. So this is page 225 of Scanning the Pharaohs. Ramesses II's skull-base defect, ACF, suggested transnasal exacerbation via R-nair, so via the right nair. So it gives you a very clear indication that you've had a transnasal exacerbation. In other words, the breaking of the nose has taken place and it was extracted through the right nostril. Okay. Now, if that's not enough for you, let me just show you one final scan so you can see how cleanly the nose was broken at the bridge. Okay. And then we can move past the whole idea of, in fact, let me just show you Ramesses III scan really quickly, just so people who are making that claim understand how this works. So This is Ramesses III, and can you see how his nose is completely flat? Okay, that's happened as a result of the nose not being packed correctly. And there are multiple pharaohs who have this same issue. Meremptah is another one who has this issue. Okay, so we have multiple pharaohs whose noses weren't packed correctly. Okay, and that causes them to be flattened. I just want to show you that one last scan of Ramesses, and then I promise you I'm going to move on. But I think this is a good point for us to kind of like have this discussion, because so much of a big deal is made about Ramesses' hook nose, and the only evidence we have of a hook nose is the mummy itself, and the mummy has a perfectly explicable reason as to why it has a hook nose. Okay, there's no like mystery behind this hook nose. The hook nose was there because of the surgery that took place to remove his brain. Very, very simply. I just want to get that one last scan to show you, because there's a really good image that shows the break, and then we can move on. Thanks for your patience, guys. Got me on my book hunting here. I didn't know we were going to do this, but you know, it's a live stream, so we can do side quests. It's okay. I do it for you guys. You ask good questions, so I get good. There we go. I think it must be here. Is that it? Oh well, okay. I can't find it. It's actually online, that image that I'm looking for, so I'm sure I can pull it up. Sorry guys, I can't find it. It's a big old book. All right, so we'll leave that there. Anyway, I think I've given you enough evidence to prove to you that Ramesses' nose is broken at the bridge, and therefore we don't have to worry about him having this major hook nose, because there's no evidence of that. And we're going to look at his artwork, because if we want to know what his nose looked like, then we can just, you know, have a look at his artwork. That will tell us, you know. For the ancestors and your patience, LOL. Thank you very much, Surfactant, for your $5. It's totally cool. I actually don't mind. This is easier doing all that genetic stuff. Mr. H has sent me $10 as well. No comment there. Well, this is interesting. Someone said we always believe the Maasai are true Egyptians who were cast out to be nomads who forgotten their history. It's interesting because we looked at that study yesterday, didn't we? Now, obviously, we know that was technically a Libyan. So there's an argument there that the Maasai might be able to trace their ancestry to maybe the Western, the Western Nile, Eastern Sahara, to kind of Libya area, because they will throw up a lot of close signals with the Takakori ladies there. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, that's an interesting statement there. What about the Afar? Well, this is where I come in. I think that Ramesside dynasty have got really give me really strong Afar vibes, the Ramesside dynasty. I'm not gonna lie. So it's interesting that you said that, because we might be kind of touching on that. And when I show you a couple of my reconstructions, you might go, okay, cool. I see that too. But that's what I see anyway. Anyway, let's get cracking. So how many are in the house? We've got 85. We've got 42 likes. Guys, you know what to do. Hit the likes up so that we can hit the ground running. So where to start? Let's start by looking at some artwork. That's a good place to start, isn't it? So we're going to start by looking at some artwork. Let's see what Ramesses' face actually looks like, and see if we can get a consistent presentation of this geezer, so we don't have to do too much guessing. Okay. Now Ramesses, bless his cotton socks, was not the kind of guy who shied away from a portrait. So the idea that there's this huge amount of guessing that we have to do to get to his countenance, to me, I've always found to be a bit bizarre. Okay. This is a colossal statue. Ramesses has multiple colossal statues. And you know the beautiful thing about all of Ramesses' colossal statues? They all look like Ramesses. They all look the same. He's not one of these confusing pharaohs or monarchs who presented differently. Although I'm going to argue that not many do. In fact, okay, all the portraits of Akhenaten look like Akhenaten, all the portraits of Tut look like Tut, and all the portraits of Ramesses look like Ramesses. They all look like this. This is his consistent feature. Okay, he had very, I'm going to say, pert lips. He has quite a relatively broad nose, but once again, that consistently strong nose bridge. So he has a strong nose bridge. My nose bridge is quite strong. His nose bridge is stronger than mine. It's quite high. So he has a strong and high nose bridge. He has large, relatively bulbous eyes. Okay, and that's another consistent theme. He's got strong cheekbones, relatively full cheeks, and he's got quite a triangular shaped face. I want you to really pick up on that feature as well. What do I mean? I mean, his face is wide at the eyes and really kind of like narrows towards the chin. So you get a triangle. He hasn't got like a square jawline. He's actually got a very feminine face once it's being constructed, because it doesn't matter how many times I run this through. Every time I pull it into some kind of AI tool, the reconstruction that I've created, it will assume that I'm dealing with a female. Okay, and that does happen with quite a few pharaohs, but Ramesses in particular has got quite a feminine facial structure. Okay, let's have a look at another photo. This one might be a relatively rare one for some of you. So these are the colossal faces at Abu Simbel. Actually, since this picture's on the screen, someone tell me why these are sitting in the sand. That'll be a good question to see if you guys know the answer. And whilst you're figuring that out or answering that, I'm going to thank Afrispora Films for your very generous $5 donation. Thank you, sir. So keep up the good res work. Res I don't know what that means. Reso work. Rest. Reconstruction, of course. Keep up the good reconstruction work, King. Love these daily lives. Thank you. Thank you. You can see my brain is falling away. Not being able to work that out. Work that out. At least that's what I thought it meant anyway. Has anyone figured out why they're sitting in the sand? Why are these faces of Ramesses sitting in the sand like that? That's a cool fact. You guys are taking a little while to get this. So he says, I don't know, but what is odd is I look like him and we both share the same birthday. My name starts with Ra. Hey, I don't believe a coincidence, man. I don't believe a coincidence. All right, so Afrosport Films got it spot on. Okay, if those of you who don't know, these are the faces, or three of the faces, of the colossal statues at Abu Simbel. And when they flooded Lake Nasser and they flooded the African artifacts in Upper Egypt / Nubia / Kush, we're not really sure where the boundary is. I actually think it might have been the entire island of Meroe that they flooded there. Regardless, when they flooded that region, they moved the temple of Abu Simbel, which would have been in the flood zone. So they moved it 60 meters up a mountain, which is where it resides today. That's how far up they had to move it. So they moved it basically complete up a march. I might have even underestimated that 60 meters. Might be, I can't remember. But either which way, they moved it up. And these are the faces on the colossal bust. And once again, if you look at the faces closely enough, first of all, yes, they all look alike. But second of all, they all look like the image that we just saw. Okay, there's still a very consistent phenotype being communicated here. Ramesses II has a strong and consistent face. These aren't fakes. They actually cut the mountains up. And I actually believed that they were lying about that. And I thought to myself, maybe there were two temples and they flooded one and kept the other and then did that. There's a video on YouTube. They moved this temple. Okay. And the most harrowing and scary thing, I in fact advise you all to watch the documentary of them moving the temple at Abu Simbel. I advise you all to watch it, because when you watch it, the only thing that would go through my mind is that if they can move a temple out of a mountain and basically move the mountain, which is kind of what they done, then they can move anything. Let that give you nightmares. Okay, if they can move a temple, they can move anything and say this is where it originally was. This belongs here. It's unbelievable. But anyway, that's something to just give you a bit of nightmares. At least that revelation gave me nightmares. Let's have a look at some more images of Ramesses' face. Now, these type of images are really useful because I normally come images to do my overlays. I need, when I create my initial reconstruction, I need a straightforward face on of any artifact that I'm working with. This is normally why I end up going to museums and getting those images myself, because they're actually relatively hard to get. But images like this, which are straight on, face on, without distortion, are perfect for then constructing a reconstruction. Okay, you can make sure that everything lines up completely, that you're not exaggerating the features. And just this view alone, we know we're looking at the face of an African there. We know we're looking at the face of an African. So there we have one. And then this next one should line up perfectly with it because I use this in conjunction. And once again, like I said, there's no change and no distortion. If these weren't colossal busts, I would have swear they've gone through a mold. That's how good these are. But once again, it just provides the proof, that consistent proof, that Ramesses' face looks the same no matter how it presents. Okay, there's from sideways, and from sideways you can see what I mean about that strong nose bridge. Okay, now some of these you have to be careful because they did do repair work, so I don't doubt they would have been tempted to and probably acted on the desire to, you know, sand and alter the features. You can actually see it on the documentary where they're filling stuff up and changing stuff. But I'm pretty satisfied that these are relatively in line with how Ramesses is consistently depicted across dozens of artworks. Okay, dozens of artworks. So yeah, let's move on. So this is the colossal bust at the British Museum. Okay, one of my favorite portraits of Ramesses. Okay, once again, all the same features, really round, soft nose. This is a typical ancient Egyptian nose tip, by the way, really round and soft. You don't get pointy noses in any dynastic era. So I'm sorry to disappoint people who think that ancient Egyptians were pointy nosed black people. They just weren't. Okay, this is Ramesses probably has the most pointy nose that you're getting. His nose isn't really pointy at all. Okay, but this is a wonderful portrait of Ramesses. Thutmose III nose has been altered in almost every portrait. So for those of you who are familiar with ancient Egyptian portraiture, some of you might be thinking, well, Thutmose III's nose sometimes is pointy. When it's fake, it is. When it's not, he's got a very broad. In fact, there's a portrait, a colossal bust of, let me just find it for you. When this first arrived to the British Museum, it was labeled as Thutmose III, and they changed it to Amenhotep III. And interestingly, it has a very similar face shape to Thutmose III, which, yeah, now has me questioning if it actually is the proper face of Thutmose III. So colossal bust of Amenhotep III, British. Some of you know which one I'm talking about, but let me put it on the screen. Museum. Not that one. It's this one here. So this one, actually, when it first arrived to the British Museum in Wallace Budge's early curator books, this, let me just quickly open image in new tab. When this bust first arrived, it was labeled as Thutmose III, which did have me questioning, because I was like, you know what, why I'm leaning towards this being Thutmose and not Amenhotep, because even when I included this in my work of Amenhotep, I did really, really struggle with the feature positioning, but particularly the nose bridge. He's got quite a similar bridge, the bridge of the nose is quite similar to Ramesses. And actually, if you look at Amenhotep III's nose bridge, it's concave. And he's one of, well, I wouldn't say a few, but one of a few, like Tutankhamun has a concave nose bridge as well. But Ramesses, Amenhotep III, in all of his portraits, there's a concave nose bridge. Okay, so it's kind of ski slope shaped nose, whereas this one kind of goes outwards. I always kind of struggled with that. And now that I know this was originally labeled as Thutmose III, I kind of think I know why I struggled with it, because I think this might be Thutmose III. I think this might be Thutmose III, this statue here. Okay. We're still in chill zone. We're going to carry on going through a few, but I'm going to read a few comments. Okay. Let's have a look. I'm glad to hear that. Mr. H said his eyes was opened a lot between myself and Professor Manu Ampim. I'm good. I feel like my work exposing fakes was seeded by Professor Ampim. He was the one with his, you know, when I saw that work being done, I was like, isn't this an important work to do that? I haven't done my long piece of research on fakes yet. It's kind of one of those things that I've written but not managed to get recorded yet, but I will do it soon. But I'm glad I've been of assistance in that area. Let's have a look. So Facton says, King has me so spun up. I don't believe most of what they tell us about history anymore. I default to that's not real. Hello, well, you know, question everything. I'm not gonna be sad about the fact that you're questioning things there, definitely. Let's have a look here. I disagree with you. I think they did work on his face. Which bust are you talking about here? Are you talking about the Abu Simbel ones? Is that what you're talking about there? Let me know which one are you talking about. Had a class of a kid from Sudan. He could easily pass a Puerto Rican and Arab. Look like my brother with nicer hair. Yeah, get that a lot in Sudan. All right. Wildflower says here we have round nose tip in East Africa. I mean, we can't speak for everyone, but it is once again, we're just talking about rates. Yeah. Once again, I'm sure there are several pointy nosed black people who are fully black and have pointy noses, but we're just talking about rates of normality. What's kind of the expected thing that you see? And even if someone has a really narrow nose, the softer tip is very much a African trait. So, you know, there you go. I don't know if this is for me, but I'm going to take it as a compliment. Thank you. You're just fabulous. How could I not put that on the screen? All right, let's carry on. Okay, we can look at some side views because this is quite interesting here as well. So I'm just going to quickly put this portrait of Ramesses up. Now, this one, I think this is Ramesses. Someone's going to come and correct me and say, no, this is Seti or something like that. But once again, you get that kind of strong nose bridge. Now, the tip looks a little bit exaggerated because we can see how soft it is in all of those statues. But the point remains that we have that strong bridge shape, that he does have that. He has that kind of strong bridge shape. You know, someone says Seti. I knew that was coming. In my gut, I kind of felt like this might be Seti. So, Jo, I know you know your stuff when it comes to the artwork, so I'm not going to argue with you there. Cool. All right. But look, you know, father, son, we can say it's a shared phenotype. At least we can get an idea of where that came from. Really nice close up here of the colossal bust at the British Museum once again. Okay. And I just want to see if there's any more interesting artwork I want to show you before we kind of move on to the mummy and early renditions. So, yeah, let's have a look at this one. So right at the bottom, okay, is this wonderful portrait of Ramesses here. Okay, this one I love, and I actually did a reconstruction of this one because this is a rare form when you see Ramesses with the, you know, African twists in his hair. Often we see him, he's either wearing the Capresh or he's normally wearing the Nemes. That was his kind of favorite crown. You always see Ramesses in his Nemes, but this was nice to see him with this kind of like African hairstyle, and then he's got this crown of Upper Egypt slash this is the Shenta. So this is the joint crown of Upper and Lower Kemet on top of the hairstyle. I don't know how that manifests itself, by the way. I have no idea. Don't ask me to. I didn't go that high. When I did the reconstruction, I just kind of like concentrated on the hairstyle because I thought that just is so cool. And what's really cool about this, the reason I want to show you this one is because look at the features once again. This is consistent Ramesses' face, okay? Consistent with Ramesses' face. Let me just flick over to. Okay, look at the mouth. Okay, look at the lips. Look at the nose. Look at, well, obviously the nose is missing in the one I've just showed you. Look at the eyes and then go back and look. It's the same individual. There's no doubt about it. Look at that triangular shaped face that I keep telling you about. Okay, this is absolutely the same individual. So this is Ramesses, although there's no argument being made, but this is just Ramesses with a different hairstyle. So it's nice to see kind of that expression. Now, when it comes to sourcing, let's go to sourcing next. So I do like to do a bit of work sourcing kind of phenotypes and things and people who I feel are carrying that vibe. Now, one of the people that I felt gave me the strongest, one of the strongest Ramesses vibes I could find is actually King Mutesa II of Buganda, which I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if the Bugandans don't trace a lineage like the Rwandans do to the 19th dynasty. We know that they still call their rulers the Shabaka, or is it the Kabakas? They call their rulers the Kabakas, which is Ka. That's, three Kemetic terms. Ka being the spirit, and Ba being the soul. So the soul between the spirits. I don't know how that translates ontologically, but there's clearly something there in terms of the way they name their rulers. And there's an interesting story behind this and I've put it on a short, but basically I have a book by Sergio Giuseppe. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. So I have this book by Giuseppe Sergi. I have this book by Giuseppe Sergi, and in this book, he basically makes the claim that Ramesses II looks just like a ruler of that time, the king of Buganda when he wrote this book, the ruler of Buganda, who was Mutesa I, and that's the grandfather of the person who I'm about to show you. So let me show you an image of Mutesa I, but Giuseppe Sergi was convinced that he was a spitting image of Ramesses. And obviously this is someone who respects the portraiture. So I'm going to quickly just pop this on the screen so you can see the image that he was referring to. Let me just put that there. I'm going to full screen it quickly. There. So you can barely, get a bit closer. You can barely see it. Well, he was convinced, this is King Mutesa I, and Giuseppe Sergi was convinced that this fella looked exactly like Ramesses II. Now, we only have drawings of him, unfortunately, but that got me on a bit of a hunt. And when I went on that bit of a hunt, I found the descendant, who was King Mutesa II. And when I found King Mutesa II, I almost fell off my chair because I was like, this dude looks exactly like Ramesses. He had really strong Ramesses features. So let me quickly show you what I mean. So I'm just going to quickly pull up the images of King Mutesa II. So there he is. This is King Mutesa II. Look at the mouth, guys. Yeah. Look at the nose. Look at the eyes. Remember what I said about the slightly bulbous eyes? And I've got another view of that as well. So you can see in there. Once again, strong nose bridge, bulbous eyes, the mouth, the triangular shaped face. Let me bring that back. Okay. A slightly bigger jaw, only slightly bigger jaw. But he gave me really, really strong Ramesses vibes. I was like, this dude looks like Ramesses. And I actually found this, if I'm going to be honest with you, I actually found this, what's the word? This reference material after I'd already done my first version. And the interesting thing was it ended up looking quite similar to where I kind of had already got to. So I thought that's quite interesting. But yeah, this is King Mutesa II. And I was like, he was like one of the first people that I saw that really looked a lot like the statues of Ramesses. And so that was a great piece of reference for me there. Then I'm trying to see what else I've got in this folder to show you. Let me show you another picture actually as well. I mean, I see some of you aren't convinced, but I don't, I'm not being rude here, but I don't know what you're seeing if you can't see that. To be honest with you, he looks just like him. If you flick between that and that, I don't know how you're not seeing it. I don't know. It looks like him, man. To me, that looks a lot like him. I don't know. Don't know. Some of you making me feel like I'm being biased here, but I see it a lot. Anyway, so that kind of brings me to, let me show you my first iteration at this point, because there are a few iterations of Ramesses to get through. So I think at this point, we're kind of good to just kind of like churn. In fact, before we do that, let's deal with the mummy controversy, because obviously this is the thing that comes up a lot. The mummy of Ramesses, okay, presents a controversy for some people. Now, if you've been on this channel for any stretch of time, you'll know that it doesn't present a controversy to me. I, unlike many reconstruction artists and Egyptologists, think that the mummy of Ramesses is entirely compatible with his statues. It took a while for me to get there, but I think that they are compatible. You don't need to deny one to get to the other. And I'm going to show you how they look very strongly. If you obey the portraiture, I'm going to do that. Start young, age your reconstruction, and then, figure out how things got to A to B. You'll realize you do not need to change the face of Ramesses to get here. You don't need to change it. This is how he looked, and this is how he started off looking. And I guess one of the early things I can do before I even get there is just to show you a portrait of a very average, normal kind of like East African man. So you can kind of see, I've got better ones than this, but this is just give you an idea. The reason I did this one particularly, I don't think this looks strongly like Ramesses, but the reason I picked this one is because I wanted to show people the hair. Okay, I want to show people the hair. This hair is very normal old black man hair, and Ramesses' hair for some reason has caused a lot of controversy. So let's quickly lay a few things out so everybody is clear, and everything that I'm going to tell you is factual and checkable. Okay, the first thing is that Ramesses was over 90. Okay, Sheikh Anta Diop, I think, said he was 94. Other Egyptologists have put it at 92, etc., etc., etc. But that's the age he was. So as such, I think we can all agree that his natural hair would have been devoid of color. Yeah, we all agree with that. Yeah, I hope I'm not going to get any pushback on that. His hair would have been white pretty much all over. No black strands at 90, pretty much. The second thing is that gray hair, even in people who have the kinkiest black hair, always grows straighter. And I've said this to people, okay? People with a full head, in fact, find someone online now, a black person with a full head of kinky white hair. I guarantee you won't find it. Gray hair grows wiry, okay? If you look at this man's hair, this is typically how any black person's hair grows when it's gray. It's wiry. Okay, it refuses to curl. That's why people always notice gray hairs in my beard, because they just grow, they just stick out straight. All of my natural hair curls nicely, but the gray hair sticks out straight, or it's very wiry. That's just standard across the board. My gray hair doesn't grow any more special than any other black person's gray hair. If you have someone with a head of gray hair, this is typically what the texture will be. Okay, it will be this wiry kind of texture. Okay, that is a fact. Next, you'll notice he has red in his beard. Okay, that's not because he's a natural redhead. That's because henna henna is an African tradition. Henna grows along the Nile. All of these other cultures that have infused henna, such as the Indian culture and some of the Arab cultures, they all got it from Africa. Okay, henna originally grows along the Nile. It's kind of the birthplace of henna and indigo. In fact, those two plants, and henna and indigo combined will give you black hair. I use henna and indigo. Indigo doesn't last very long. It lasts for a week, a couple of weeks max, and then it fades. Henna is pretty much permanent if you've allowed it to sit in your hair. So all of you can't see it right now, but all of the beards in my hair that have got a bit of henna on them, they're all red. So right now my beard is a mess of black, red, and white hairs. Okay, because the indigo doesn't last very long, but the henna lasts a really long time. Okay, it's semi-permanent, and that's why you'll see a lot of people in Africa walking around with strands of red hair or with semi-red hair like this. That's henna. When they can be bothered, they'll dye it of indigo, and sometimes they just like having a bit of color in their white hair. It's just a bit more interesting than just being white, having a bit of white and red. Okay, that's standard procedure. So Ramesses, when people claim he had red hair, it's already known and it's already been proven that the red in Ramesses' hair was henna. That's it. It was henna. It's 100% been proven. There's studies on it. And we know for a fact that the henna and indigo or indigo tin usage dates back to prior to the New Kingdom. So this is a tradition that goes back thousands of years. Okay. So how do we get from this? Yeah. Look at the hair here. How do we get from this to, let me just pull up a picture of Ramesses' mummy. Here it is. So I just got to scroll up to it. So how do we get from this to this? And the simple answer is you wrap your hair. Okay, it's not rocket science. When black people wrap their hair, just like I've got a do-rag on my head at the moment, okay, when you wrap wiry hair, it's going to go straight. What you'll notice is that Ramesses' hair right now, do you notice how it's sticking to his scalp? It's not falling down. The reason Ramesses' hair is sticking to his scalp and gravity is not causing it to fall down is because Ramesses' hair is African hair. If Ramesses' hair was naturally straight European hair, right now it would be falling down. But this is what happens when you have straight Afro or black people's hair, curly, white. I'm not going to guess his exact texture. I'm not saying he had 4C, blah, blah, blah. I'm not making that claim. The point I'm making is African hair, this is what happens when it's been stuck to the scalp for a long time. It continues to take people with waves don't take their wave cap off, and then because their hair's straight, it starts blowing in the wind. It doesn't work that way. It stays stuck to their scalp. It's straight, but it's now set in a certain direction. Okay, so the hair is straight, but it's now set in a certain direction. All right, very, very simple. So his hair is a definite reflection of African hair. If it wasn't African hair, it would be falling down. So I showed you a picture of this Ethiopian man here because I want you to be clear at what you're looking at in Ramesses' corpse. Okay, it absolutely is an expression of African hair. Okay, no doubt about it. All right, so there you go. Censored, thank you very much for that. Yes, Ramesses' DNA was never published. And we know why that is, because Zahi Hawass would have published it ages ago if there was good news. We all know that to be the case. All right, so we've now looked at Ramesses' mummy, and obviously, let me just pull Ramesses' mummy up again. Okay, we know the nose being broken as a result of transnatal craniotomy. We know the extent at which his nose bridge was prominent. It wasn't this prominent. Okay, we know the extent to which it was prominent. It's been exaggerated, but the portraits would tell us how prominent his nose is. And I think that now puts us in a place where we can start to look at some of the reconstructions that I've created and get this stream almost to a point where we can kind of say, yeah, that's that. So where shall I start? Let's start with a young Ramesses. So I'm going to show you a young Ramesses, and I'm actually going to show you him. In fact, I'm going to start off with the bust. So let's start off with the bust here, so we can remind ourselves of Ramesses' features. Okay, remind ourselves what he looks like. Okay, get an idea of what Ramesses looks like. Okay, those lips, everything, yeah, nose, everything. And now let's look at first attempts. So, in fact, I'm just going to go through and just show you my latest. I'm not going to bother showing the first attempts. I'm going to show you kind of my latest ones. So, let's show Ramesses wearing the Nemes first of all. So this is a portrait of Ramesses wearing a Nemes 25. So I'm just looking for I'm just flicking over, looking at file names, making sure I get the right one up. Yeah, so here's Ramesses wearing a Nemes. Okay. So these are my latest reconstructions of Ramesses, by the way. And I did one with a bit of a fresher Nemes here. I think I prefer this one. So you get an idea of what he looks like with the Nemes. At least this is in my head, a good projection of what Ramesses looks like. And I wish I could show you kind of overlaid how it looks like the statues, because they look, it slides over perfect, and you can see that the features have been honored across the board. Okay, you know, I don't change any features to get to where I get to. And I'm going to show you, actually, this next one I'm going to show you is a collage of Ramesses next to, now there's a statue that's next to Cleopatra's needle that I think I told you about. And I took a photo of it because I was like, that's Ramesses' face. It's a Sphinx. It's not a genuine ancient Egyptian artwork, but they've really honored Ramesses' face, which I find strange because obviously it's in Britain. And I'm like, why haven't they turned it into a white man like they did in Hollywood? Why have they preserved this African man's features? So anyway, I took a picture of it and I collaged it next to my reconstruction of Ramesses. So let me show you it really quickly, because that's just interesting to see the resemblance there. So you can see there, this is the Sphinx, and this is in, like I said, this is in London, and that's like, this is a really good likeness of Ramesses. So I did this just today, just to see the comparison between the two. Obviously, I'm not right at the right eye level, but yeah, it's a good statue. It's a really, really good statue. So yeah, now the next one I'm going to show you is Ramesses with the twists. Okay, I'm going to show you Ramesses with the twists because I really like that rendition, and he's slightly old, a little bit older in this one as well. So I'll show you Ramesses with the twists. So this is Ramesses with the twists. What I really like about Ramesses, got that he's definitely, like I said, I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of like that, a blend between kind of like that, just that really strong Nubian, Great Lakes, Cushitic phenotype. It feels like it just sits right kind of like in the middle. And you can kind of see how the 19th dynasty probably had an influence on all of those, ethnicities, all of those ethnic groups, to be honest with you. So I really like this rendition because it reminds me obviously of, well, actually it was done in the manner of the statue with the twist that I showed you earlier, which is down here. Let me just quickly pull it up on the screen again. So this is the statue with the twist. So this is what gave me the inspiration for that. Yeah, so the Afar type, definitely a strong Afar shout out in that reconstruction there. Let's just pull it up on the screen again. So it's, I'm losing my trail. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so this one actually is one where he's slightly younger, and it's just kind of like no accoutrements, no crown, no nothing, just to get a picture of what a young Ramesses may have looked like. Once again, honoring all of the features as much as possible. And I actually think, strangely enough, this looks a bit like this looks strongly, gives me strong vibes of the colossal bust. And it made me think that that colossal bust that's in the British Museum is a really young Ramesses. So I'll pull that back up on the screen so you know which one I'm talking about. But it makes me think, hey, this might be a really young Ramesses because it looks a lot like my reconstruction at a young age. So this one here, let me show you from another view so you get a feel for it there. So this one here. So this one here makes me feel, and if you look at the width of the shoulders as well, it could be that this was Ramesses as a boy. Just because of how it kind of like looks a bit like, well, at least I'm going to say that selfishly because it looks like my young rendition. So that's why I'm saying it. No ulterior motives there. But let me pull it out there. So there. Now the next one I'm going to show you is actually a collage of, because I have gone through a few renditions to get there, and I know exactly what's going to happen when I show you other renditions. Certain people prefer the older ones or prefer the newer ones, but let me just quickly show you some other renditions that I've done, which are very close, by the way. None of them really stray very far from where I've ended up. But let me show you some renditions that I've done. So let me just quickly pull up this one over here. Okay, so this one's very similar. Only made very, very slight modifications to this. So this one you can actually just say, it's not really even a different rendition, it's just a slightly older look at the same one that you just looked at a moment ago. So you get a feel or vibe for the face there. And then that kind of brings us on to some of the ones that we can now that we've kind of looked at actually, let me just show you what the statues look like and kind of do a little flick between the statue and so you can remember where we started off. So this is the statue, you can see it there, and another one of the statues. Okay, so you can get a feel for the features and the face of Ramesses. Okay, and then I've got a few kind of renditions. Well, normally when I try and play these videos, it doesn't work, but I do want to show you one of the videos if it allows it to play, because the videos, when they bring them to life, it does just give a nice little touch. But let's see if it plays. Yeah, it doesn't like playing. It's so weird how my PC can't play a simple video like this off Google Cloud. I have to download it, and then by the end of it, I can't be bothered. Okay, forget that one. All right, I'm going to forget the videos. The videos won't work. But let me show you, once again, I'm just going to quickly show you the Nemes one so you can do a comparison with the statue we just saw. And then we're going to show you the older versions and show you how they are entirely compatible with the mummy, because I think that's really important that we understand that we're not doing a hop, skip, and a jump. We're not changing the phenotype of Ramesses. We're keeping his phenotype exactly as it is, okay? And we're simply aging it up. So from here, now I'm going to show you what an elderly Ramesses, in my view, would have looked like. So let's pull this one up here. So this is what I believe an elderly Ramesses would have looked like. Now, in my view, this is entirely compatible with Ramesses' mummy. Okay, entirely compatible. Obviously, the hair's a bit shorter here. The hair would have been longer, but it would have been wiry and it would have been wrapped down to the head. Hence, he has that kind of old man's wave pattern, which is just, you know, a few strands of hair stuck to his head, which is why his hair doesn't flop around or blow in the wind, okay, because it's African hair and it's stuck by means of the way it was kept. The nose, I know a lot of people want me to make the nose stronger. This is as strong as his statues showed. Okay, he has a strong nose bridge. Okay, so I'm going to make it very clear. He does have a strong nose bridge, but it wasn't this big hooky hook nose that's not seen on any of his statues. It was just a strong nose bridge. So that strong nose bridge is there. We know that the kind of hooking of the nose that we have now as a result of the TNC process, or the transnasal craniotomy process, and then packing his nose in that way. That's all it is. This is what, in my view, the natural nose would look like, because this is just an aged version of the nose we already see on the statues. Once again, no need to change the features. Also, some features of Ramesses' mummy that they like to ignore, but I think I like to remind them of sometimes as well, because here's what's really important. Ramesses' mummy has some really African features. Now, aside from the fact that Ramesses' mummy is strongly dolichocephalic, I think he's 0.7. So he's like almost a super dolichocephalic skull. He also has really strong, let me just quickly pull it up. 3, 4, okay, cool. He has very strong cheekbones. They actually protrude through the side of his mummy. Okay, so Ramesses has really, really, really strong cheekbones, a very long and narrow head. Okay, so strong dolichocephaly and a very long and narrow head. And if we honor that in terms of how we produce the reconstruction, you can see that I've tried to preserve that strong kind of cheekbone, keep that triangular shape, which he's kept, by the way. If you look at the mummy, he's kept this, the cheekbones that create that strong triangular shape to his face. And I've tried my best to keep that as much as possible. Okay. Large eyes. Okay. Maybe not, maybe could have made them slightly more bulbous, slightly more. So that's maybe an adjustment I can do in future renditions, because if you do look at his statues, they do have slightly more bulbous eyes. So I could do that in future renditions, but I quite like this. And then, you know, everything else is just as we see it. Okay, we don't have to do that much of a hop, a skip, and a jump in terms of our imagination to get from the mummy, where the mummy is, to where this reconstruction lies. Let me show you another view, a face-on view of this. So this is the face-on view. And once again, in my view, he has that. I'm just going to pull up that because it's the only one I've got. I wish I'd shown more, but I'm just going to pull up once again this statue. Oh, sorry, this kind of Ethiopian man here, just so we can see the consistent phenotypes, that strong reddish skin. We can see that wiry hair. The cheekbones of this Ethiopian man are a bit more sunken. He hasn't got the strong cheekbones that Ramesses does. But you can see regionally, you know, if we're going to speak broadly of regions, it's a regionally, you know, East African, East Central African kind of phenotype. It's just there, you know. That's what I'm seeing here. I don't think we have to do that much in terms of understanding what we're beholding here. Okay, it's a regional phenotype. Okay, trying to see if I have some cool videos that I would love to have shown you. But you know what I'll do instead? I'll post them as a short, so you guys can see those. But really, that kind of brings me to a conclusion in terms of my reconstruction of Ramesses. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really pleased with where I've ended up with this. I think this is a reconstruction that's consistent with both his statues and portraiture, but also honors what we can see in the mummy itself and considers all of those things. And likely, as you can see, the mummy and the portraits are exhibiting kind of like the same phenotype, that strong kind of East African phenotype that we can see. So I'm quite happy with the way this has come out. This is my latest rendition, by the way. I have different renditions of an old Ramesses, but I'm definitely set on this one. This one at the moment is speaking to me the most. So I'm really happy with that. On that note, let me just quickly have a quick fly through on the comments. And yeah, after we've done that, I think we'll wrap it up because I think this is a good length for a live stream. Okay, so let's just have a quick look, make sure I haven't missed anything. Darth Skywalker said Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the whole area is Nigeru, or I would argue, yeah, Pawunta or Puantu, sorry, yeah, that region. I wouldn't argue with that, but I'd say we have a bit of work to do to continue to kind of like drive that home, or at least find the research to support it. I think, yeah, strong argument there. There's an article online entitled Egyptian Pharaohs Related to Ugandans. That'll be one worth looking at. Giving myself a reminder now when I watch this video back. TK, the one with the hairstyle is different from the others to me. That's why I said there is work that's been done on his face. The one with the hairstyle. Oh, is it? Do you think it looks different? Okay. I think it looks the same. I just think the nose has been knocked off. But yeah, I'll have a double look to see if I see that. But I've kind of overlaid them and they're really, really, really similar. Sensor doesn't think he looks like Ramesses II. Sorry, I think you're talking about Mutesa here. I think he does. I don't know. But I know why you're saying that, because you say that you look like Ramesses. It would be good to see what you look like to do a comparison. Maybe I can borrow some of your phenotype, because I do that quite a lot. So when someone gives me vibes of a certain person, that's why I end up revising my reconstructions, because I'm like, actually, you know what, you do look more like Ramesses, and I can do an update to it. So yeah, let's see. You know, obviously I'm not asking you to post your picture online. Someone else disagreed and said he's a twin to Ramesses, so that's fair. It's all opinion at the end of the day. Someone else talking about Mutesa II said, saw this about a year ago, dead ringer. Yeah, that's what I thought personally. But I respect if people don't all feel the same way. All right, some interesting conversations going on. Surfactant asking if I dye my hair. Did I stutter when I said it? You know, I don't think I started, Surfactant. I said it with my chest. Sorry. You got me laughing in my head to some Kevin Hart now. Okay. How do I refute people who say the Egyptians had Arab or European DNA? Don't need to. It refutes itself. What's that? Say provide proof, you know, and then obviously they're gonna go to like the 2017 Schunemann study, at which point you can read the article that I just posted. Let's do that actually. Let's have a quick look. I just posted an article. Since you've asked that question, we might as well deal with the matter and deal with it proper. There's a link to this. I popped it in the post, but I'm going to pop it in the chat now as well. This is a new article I've just posted. It's like a mini paper. It's not quite a paper. It's not long enough for me to call it an academic paper, but it is relatively robust in terms of the content. Just pinning it quickly for you guys to see. And this paper deals with that exact question. Okay, evaluating DNA interpretation in Africa. and essentially just highlights all of the problems and highlights all of the reasons Europeans and Eurocentrics are getting to the conclusions that they're getting to when it comes to sampling ancient African DNA. Now, in fairness, whenever they've sampled pharaohs, it's always come out looking African. This is why they don't really sample pharaohs anymore. But now they're kind of finding different plots and places to sample. But the problem is that their entire approach is inconsistent, it's flawed, it's biased, and it's always going to reflect what they want it to reflect. And when it doesn't, they'll just revise it until it does. So I'm not going to try and go through any of that because I had a really in-depth DNA give me a headache kind of live stream yesterday. If you want to watch that, you can watch that. But if you don't want to watch that, just have a read of this article. That will bring you up to a bit of a level. And I have a few good articles that you can look into. So if that was a genuine question, thank you for asking it. This is correct as well. They only published the Y DNA of Ramses III. They avoided Ramses II, maybe trying to avoid a riot in Cairo. Someone said my reconstruction resembles Amos. That's interesting. I didn't see that before, and I would worry slightly if you said it did, because I don't see that strong a resemblance between Amos. To be honest, I don't really see a strong resemblance between the 18th and 19th dynasty. So then I'll be like, okay, cool. I need to make some changes because they should look as different as their statues do, So that's the only one thing I'd say. Can you make him white so we can see how ridiculous? A lot of people ask me to do this and I'm reluctant to do it. I feel like it would be it's not that it's antagonistic. It's I can kind of see the point that you're trying to make there. But then it does make it seem like this channel is about disproving Eurocentrism, and it's not. This channel is about proving the ancient Egyptians were African and proving African civilization. We don't really care what the Europeans do or think. So I don't want them ever thinking that I care enough to make that kind of effort. So that's probably why I won't do that. But I appreciate the thought, because you're not the first person who's made that request. Hervé's pointed out that's like a far type. Yes, I think I can see the afar. I agree with that. How do you determine skin tone when producing likeness? Well, a lot of the statues a lot of the monarchs have artwork with preserved skin tone on it. We do have quite a bit coming out of the Ramesside dynasty suggesting that strong reddish brown that you saw in that Ethiopian fella. I think we see quite a lot of that coming out of the Ramesside dynasty. I'm not sure if we see it. I do feel like there is one of Ramesses the Great that does have that complexion, but I'd have to rack through my brain where I've seen it. Well, sometimes I kind of just pull the trigger based on the phenotype. So based on the kind of features that I'm being faced with. So for instance, I'll give you an example. When I did the reconstruction of Nama, because he gave me such strong Khoisan and Xhosa phenotype, I leaned towards really like kind of your complexion. I leaned towards that kind of yellowy brown because that's the one that matched the features. And I try and do that as well. So when the features give me something, I'll lean towards what the features are giving me. And that's when I don't have a complexion reference. But sometimes I do, Let me shout out quickly the donation, which has been sitting there for a while. So a big shout out to Deshaun Williams. Thank you very much. This is great. It even reflects his younger statues like an Abu symbol. Try adding names. I think I showed the Nemes. Maybe I'll do an old with the Nemes. Maybe that's what you're requesting there. But yeah, I showed the one with the Nemes on the head. Thank you. And this is what's important as well. It's about making a reconstruction that looks like all, and I'm glad you pointed this out and you said this. Thank you very much for your $20, by the way. making reconstruction that looks like all of the artwork, not just like one piece, one that really speaks to everything that's being produced about that individual, where you can say, well, this still looks like this one, it still looks like this one, it still looks like this one. That's why I think you could take that old Ramesses that I've created and you could put him next to any of Ramesses' younger statues and go, yeah, that's the same dude. That's kind of what I'm trying to do when I make my reconstruction. So I'm glad that you noted that and you pointed that out, because that's quite important. So yeah, thank you for your $20 and thank you, because that's a cool observation that you've made there. Can you tell why they painted some ancient Egyptians yellow? Yes, I can. So, all right. So first of all, this is another longer piece that I need to do. First of all, a lot of artifacts that we look at today have been altered. Okay. Almost all of the statuettes where they show the men in brown, Egyptian antiquities have been going in and painting all the women yellow. So a lot of the time the yellow is just a proof of tampering. I've seen sarcophagi and statues that were originally brown. They clean the brown off, and then if it's a woman, they'll just paint it yellow and go, oh yeah, this was the original color. Then you've got fakes like the statue of Nofret with Rahotep, which is not even yellow, it's just like this creamy pink, which is just never ever used in ancient Egyptian artwork. Okay, so then you've got the fakes, but then you do have the genuine yellows. So which cases was yellow genuinely used? Okay, there's a few cases. First of all, sometimes on the occasion they were painting an Asiatic, okay, and the person's yellow because the person's yellow. I think we have an example of that in the Middle Kingdom. I think we have a papyrus where Queen Kemsit, who's the wife of Mentuhotep, is having her hair done by one of her Asiatic maids. An Asiatic maid has yellow skin. King Kemsit has dark brown skin, close to black skin. So there's that occasion. Second occasion where people are painted yellow is normally on sarcophagi. So painting yellow was the second closest thing you could get to gilding. Now, obviously, you have kind of like a tier system of what people were buried in. If you were a king, you're going to be buried in normally a solid gold sarcophagus. Okay, you have an inner, so you 3 levels of sarcophagus. You have an outer, a middle, and an inner sarcophagus. Okay, and the inner one will have solid gold, attributes like a solid gold mask that we have in the case of King Tutankhamun. Okay. Next down the line, you have the nobles. Now, the nobles normally didn't have the affordability to have solid gold, although sometimes they had close to solid gold, like we see with Tuya and Yuya. But a lot of the time, what they'd have is gilded artifacts. So gilded means covered in a layer of gold, and obviously the richer that they were, the more gilded or more heavily gilded they were. By the time you move down towards the lower nobles, you're just talking about essentially the surface being painted in gold. And this painting in gold is something they wouldn't only do in tombs, they would also do it on tomb walls when they would show certain deities such as Hathor or Heteru. They would show her in a gilded format. Okay, so she was a deity that was supposed to be portrayed in gold. Now, where gold was not available, they would utilize yellow as a substitute. So this is where you get more down towards the kind of between nobles and the more common folk. If you look at their sarcophagi, a lot of them will be painted yellow. The painting in yellow is an effort to gild it, an effort to say this is supposed to be gold. Okay, so you kind of got those layers of which yellow is the choice there. The other time you'll see yellow used is yellow tended to be the base color for women, whereas red tended to be the base color for Kemetic men. And this actually is, strangely enough, proven in the very article that a certain creator tried to use to essentially say that all the artwork has faded. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But that very article talks about the fact that the ancient Egyptian artworks will go through a multi-step process. So you'd have an initial artist who would come along and who would essentially do the stenciling work. Okay, so this is for a tomb work or a stele. Okay, so an artist would come along and essentially do the stenciling work. That artist would then paint the stencil either red or yellow to make it clear to the, I don't know what you call the chiseling artist. I'm just going to call them the chiseling artist, the person who comes next and actually chiseled into the wall of the stele. They would paint it red so that person would know A, if it's a woman, B, if it's a man, A, if it's an ancient Egyptian, or B, if it's a foreigner. So there was a color code, so they knew what they were chiseling. Okay, and yellow and red was a very quick way to differentiate between Kemetic women and Kemetic men. Now, this is only a base color. It was never the finishing color. Browns would be the finishing color. So you'd paint them brown, this, that, and the other. But what happens when those brown paints fade? What happens when the limestone rubs away and the brown paints fade? It's that very thin layer that seeped in of red and yellow is what tended to be left over, which is why people go around thinking that a lot of ancient Egyptian artwork was deliberately red when it wasn't deliberately red. It's just that the red has lasted because it was a thinner compound, and the browns often get rubbed away by the Egyptian antiquities. So there's a whole host of reasons why sometimes, occasionally, yellow was in use, like a whole host of them. And that's just a few. I'm sure I haven't covered all of them, but I've just kind of given you a few there. All right. Yeah, the portraits in Seti's temple are dark. That's true. Seti the first, definitely dark. Even his mummy is jiggly jet black. So yeah, so he probably was a lot darker. Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen a reconstruction of Meremptar by Nydia Senegal, and it's wicked. Really, really love it. It's wonderful. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if you haven't checked out Nydia's reconstruction of Meremptar, it's really good. She does amazing work. I need to do this as well. Someone said I need to move on to 25th dynasty. It's in my to-do list. I definitely want to do the 25th dynasty. And they've got some amazing statues whose noses have survived amazingly. Let's look on. Late Roman era has some creamy pink. I'm really not that familiar with late. Yes, the sarcophagus. Yeah. So obviously late Roman era. Yes, we do see a lot of creamy pink, or a few creamy pink kind of creeping its way in. But also we just see a whole bunch of fakery around that era as well. There's a lot of fakery going on with people basically trying to take valueless items and add value to them. I've spoke about this already. I plan to do a live, well, not live stream, a proper documentary about the Phaeton portraits and about the fact that a whole bunch of them, a whole host of them, were just fabricated on the spot because you had completely and entirely valueless cadavers that were of no value whatsoever. They weren't even mummified, but they realized by attaching these portraits to them, they suddenly became something that museums around the world wanted to buy. And I believe it was a hoax I believe that Petrie may have participated in this hoax, but this is why we have the issue of faces repeating in the Phaeton portraits. You have a lot of repeating faces, and people say that, and then they kind of like it's no big deal. Phaeton portraits are entirely a hoax. We have portraits that are older than the people who are inside the coffins. Fathom that. I'll say that again. You have portraits that are older than the people in the coffins. You have portraits that are a different race than the people in the coffins. Okay. And then you have portraits that clearly repeat themselves. Same portrait over and over again. You have portraits that clearly have the same artist spanning a couple hundreds of years, with clearly the same artist, no shadow of a doubt. So this is a massive hoax, and I don't think people really take or took this fame portraits that seriously anyway, to be totally honest with you. Yeah, there was also that's good that you remember that. The comparison of the red horses was convinced. I mean, that is what it is. Yeah, we see the the wall art where the horses are exactly the same tone as the skin of the ancient Egyptians, and we know that the horses are a deep dark brown. And we know this is also the case with basically everything that's brown. Everything that used to be brown in nature ends up being the same reddish tone as the ancient Egyptians, which would then lead you to a very logical conclusion as to the color they all used to be. You know, so there you go. Cool. I think we're good there, man. I think we're good there. Let's call it a day. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anyone. A big shout out to Deshawn, Afrospora, Mr. H, Surfactant. I hope everyone has enjoyed the live stream. Okay, there's another look at my portrait of Ramesses II. Shout out to Wesker for the idea of doing this live stream. I've actually really enjoyed it. It's been chilled. We haven't had to do anything too I haven't had to raise my voice or get heated thinking about and looking at the reception of Eurocentrism today. We just get to be really cool about it. Y'all stay on my case. It's coming soon. Yeah, I am dropping the Queen Nefertiti documentary very soon. Darth, thank you very much for thinking this is a good live. I appreciate that. Do me a favor, guys. Hit the likes up before you go. And a big shout out to my donators. I really appreciate you. And everyone who's just been in the chat. It's been chilled. It's been enjoyable. It's been a fantastic evening. And I'm going to wish you a fantastic day. And I'll probably see you tomorrow. Peace.